My nephew looked me in the eye and said, "Aunt Susan, you're too old to manage your finances. Sign this power of attorney or we'll have you declared incompetent." I smiled and signed the papers. He had no idea I was a retired fraud investigator who'd been tracking his theft for months. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Susan, and at 74 years old, I thought I'd seen every kind of money scam possible. After 35 years as a fraud investigator, catching corporate thieves and people who stole from companies, I believed I could spot a con artist from a mile away. I was wrong about one thing, though. I never expected the con artist to be family. It started 6 months after my husband David's funeral. I was still learning to live alone in the house we'd shared for 48 years when my nephew, Mike, showed up at my door with his wife, Lisa. Mike was my late sister's son, a 45-year-old man who'd never quite found his way in life, despite every chance we'd given him. "Aunt Susan," he said, hugging me with what seemed like real warmth, "I've been so worried about you living here all alone. Are you managing okay with all of Uncle David's paperwork?" I invited them in for coffee, watching how Lisa's eyes immediately started checking out my stuff. The old furniture, the original paintings, the expensive crystal collection David and I had built up over decades of good living. Actually, I admitted, it has been a lot to handle. David took care of all our investments and accounts. I'm not even sure what we have anymore. This wasn't really true. While David handled our day-to-day money stuff, I'd been quietly keeping track of our assets in my own spreadsheets for years, old habits from my fraud investigation days. But something about their visit felt planned, so I decided to play the confused widow and see what happened next. Mike's face lit up with what I now know was opportunity, not concern. "You know what, Aunt Susan? I've been helping a lot of older folks with their money planning lately. Maybe I could take a look at your situation, help you get organized." "That's so sweet," I said, watching Lisa examine the marking on my silver tea set. "But I wouldn't want to be a bother." "No bother at all," Lisa jumped in, her voice sugar-sweet. "Mike has such a talent for this kind of thing. He's helped several elderly clients avoid making expensive mistakes." Several elderly clients. The phrase stuck with me. Mike worked part-time at a hardware store. When did he become a financial advisor? Over the next few weeks, Mike visited regularly, each time offering to help with my complicated money situation. He brought official-looking forms and spoke in worried tones about the dangers of identity theft, market ups and downs, and how hard it was to manage assets at my age. "The thing is, Aunt Susan," he explained during one visit, spreading papers across my kitchen table, "these investment accounts are just sitting there, not working hard for someone in your situation. And if something happened to you, the legal process would be a nightmare for the family." I nodded along, playing the overwhelmed widow while mentally noting every warning sign. His suggestions all involved putting my accounts under his control, claiming it would make everything easier and protect me from scammers. The irony wasn't lost on me. But it was Lisa who showed their true plan during what they thought was a private moment. I'd excused myself to use the bathroom, but their voices carried clearly from the kitchen. "How much do you think she's actually worth?" Lisa whispered. "The house alone is worth at least $800,000, and David was an engineer for 40 years. I'm betting there's close to $2 million in various accounts." "When can we start moving money?" "Soon. I need to gain her complete trust first. Then we get power of attorney and start moving assets to our control. She's old and confused. No one will question it." My blood ran cold. They weren't trying to help me. They were planning to steal everything David and I had worked for our entire lives. I returned to the kitchen with a smile, but inside, something had completely changed. The grief-stricken widow they thought they were manipulating was gone, replaced by the fraud investigator who'd spent decades catching thieves exactly like them. That night, I sat in David's study and began doing what I did best, building a case. First, I looked into Mike's background more carefully. What I found was disturbing. Public records showed he'd been involved in 2 previous elder fraud cases, though charges had been dropped when the victims were considered too confused to testify properly. He'd moved to our city only 8 months ago, right around the time David's illness became serious. This wasn't just greedy opportunity. This was planned targeting. I opened a new notebook, the same kind I'd used for fraud investigations, and began writing down everything. Every visit, every suggestion, every red flag. I also started recording our conversations using a small digital recorder I'd kept from my working days. Meanwhile, I played my part perfectly. I acted confused about money terms, worried about making mistakes, and grateful for their help. I let Mike believe he was slowly gaining my trust and dependence.
"I just don't understand all these numbers," I told him during one visit, pointing to statements I could read as easily as a children's book. "Maybe you're right about making everything simpler." Mike's eyes gleamed. "I think that's very smart, Aunt Susan. And don't worry, I'll handle all the complicated details. You won't have to stress about any of it." The more confused I acted, the bolder they became. Lisa started commenting on how the house was too big for me and suggesting I might be happier in a smaller place, probably one they could help me find and sell when the time came. During one particularly revealing conversation I recorded, Mike explained his services to Lisa when they thought I was napping in my chair. "The beauty of power of attorney is that once I have it, I can make any money decisions I think are in her best interest," he said quietly. "Moving money around, selling assets, even buying property if needed, as long as I can say it's for her care. And who's going to question it? She has no other family, no close friends. By the time anyone notices, we'll have everything moved over." They were right about one thing. I had very little family left, but they were wrong about my friends and completely wrong about what I could do. Over the next month, I gathered evidence like I was building a federal case. I wrote down their suggestions, recorded their conversations, and most importantly, I set traps. I mentioned fake assets to see if they'd try to find them. I described relatives who didn't exist to test if they'd claim to know them. I even pretended to have small memory problems about things I'd never told them, then watched them try to fill in details they couldn't possibly know. Every test proved what I suspected. They'd been researching my finances on their own, probably through illegal ways, and had developed a complete plan to steal my assets. But the final piece of evidence came when Mike brought the power of attorney documents to my house, along with a witness who said he was a notary public. "Now, Aunt Susan," Mike said, his voice gentle but pushy, "this is just a safety measure. It gives me the legal right to help you if you ever become unable to make money decisions yourself. It's what Uncle David would have wanted." I looked at the documents with my trained eye. They weren't the standard power of attorney forms. These were complete, immediate control documents that would give Mike total power over my assets the moment I signed them. "What if I change my mind later?" I asked innocently. "Oh, you can cancel at any time," Mike assured me. But I noticed he exchanged a look with the notary that suggested otherwise. I was about to sign when Mike's phone rang. He stepped outside to take the call, and I heard him clearly through the open window. "Yeah, it's happening today," he said to whoever was calling. "By tonight, I'll have complete control over everything. The old lady is so confused, she doesn't even know what she's signing." That phone call was the final nail in Mike's coffin. I signed the papers with a shaking hand, playing my role perfectly, while inside I was already 3 steps ahead of them. "There," I said weakly, as if the effort had worn me out. "I hope I'm doing the right thing." Mike patted my shoulder like I was a child. "You absolutely are, Aunt Susan. Don't worry about anything anymore. I'll take care of everything." The notary packed up his stuff and left with Mike, both of them probably celebrating their successful con on the drive home. What they didn't know was that I'd been recording the entire meeting, including Mike's phone conversation about the confused old lady. That evening, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and smiled for the first time since David's death. Not because I was happy, but because I finally had enough evidence to destroy them completely. The next morning, I drove to the law offices of Jennifer Martinez, the attorney who'd handled David's estate. Jennifer was sharp, honest, and had dealt with enough elder fraud cases to spot the signs immediately. "Susan," she said after reviewing my evidence, "this is textbook financial abuse. The recordings alone are enough for criminal charges, but what you've documented here is extraordinary." I spread my notebooks across her conference table. 35 years of fraud investigation teaches you to be thorough. Jennifer studied the timeline I'd created, the recorded conversations, and the copies of the power of attorney documents. She said, "They made one crucial mistake. The notary who witnessed your signature isn't licensed in this state. The entire document is worthless." "I know," I replied. "I checked his credentials the moment he introduced himself." Mike was so eager to move forward that he didn't bother checking if his partner was legitimate. Over the next week, Jennifer worked with the district attorney's office while I continued my performance. Mike began making his moves immediately, just as I'd expected. He contacted my bank to ask about accessing my accounts, called my investment firm about moving assets, and even spoke with a real estate agent about helping me downsize.
Every action was documented. Every phone call was recorded by the financial companies who'd been warned by Jennifer to watch for suspicious activity. But Mike's biggest mistake came when he got greedy. 3 days after I'd signed the fake power of attorney, he showed up at my house with Lisa and another man I didn't recognize. "Aunt Susan," Mike announced, "I've been looking at your finances, and I'm worried about some problems. I think someone might be trying to steal from you." The nerve was breathtaking. He was accusing unknown thieves of the exact crime he was committing. "What kind of problems?" I asked, clutching my robe around me as if I'd just woken up. The unknown man stepped forward. "Mrs. Thompson, my name is Tom Williams. I'm a financial advisor. Mike asked about your situation. Based on what we found, we need to move your assets into a protected trust immediately." I let my voice shake with fear. "Oh no! What's happening to my money?" Mike put his arm around my shoulders. "Don't worry. Tom specializes in protecting seniors from financial predators. He's going to set up secure accounts that no one can access without proper permission." "Permission from whom?" I asked. "From me," Mike said smoothly, "as your appointed financial guardian." Guardian. He'd promoted himself from power of attorney to guardian without even involving the courts. Tom opened his briefcase and pulled out more official-looking documents. "We need to move quickly, Mrs. Thompson. Every day we wait, you're at risk." I pretended to study the papers with confused eyes, but my fraud training kicked in immediately. These weren't bank documents or trust agreements. They were account transfer forms that would move my assets into accounts controlled by Tom Williams, who I was certain was Mike's partner in this expanded con. "I'm so scared. What if we're too late? What if they've already stolen everything?" "Let me check your accounts right now," Mike offered, pulling out his laptop. "I'll log in and make sure everything is still there." I gave him my banking information, fake numbers I'd memorized for this exact moment. As he typed, I watched his face change, from confidence to confusion to panic. "Aunt Susan, your accounts, they're empty." Lisa gasped. "Empty? How is that possible?" "Someone beat us to it," Tom said grimly. "Whoever was targeting you moved fast." I let out a cry of desperation that would have won an Oscar. "My money, David's life insurance, everything we worked for." Mike's face went white. "Aunt Susan, I'm so sorry. If only you'd signed the power of attorney sooner, I could have protected you." For the next hour, they comforted me while discussing their next steps. Tom suggested we contact the FBI. Lisa mentioned that I might qualify for victim help programs. Mike promised to help me navigate the complex legal process of getting back stolen assets. Their performance was almost as good as mine. Finally, after much hand-wringing and fake tears, they left to begin the investigation. I watched them from my window as they sat in Mike's car, probably planning how to get whatever small amounts they could from my remaining assets. The next morning, I called Mike with a trembling voice. "Mike, I need you to come over right away. The FBI called, and they want to talk to me about the theft. I'm so scared I can't think straight." He arrived within 30 minutes, bringing Lisa and Tom for moral support. They found me in my kitchen, surrounded by tissues, and wearing the same robe I'd had on the day before. "What did the FBI say?" Mike asked urgently. "They're sending agents this afternoon. They said they need to review all my financial records and interview anyone who had access to my accounts." I watched the three of them exchange nervous looks. "Maybe we should call a lawyer," Lisa suggested. "Why would we need a lawyer?" I asked innocently. "We haven't done anything wrong." "Of course not," Mike said quickly. "It's just that sometimes these investigations can get complicated, and innocent people can get caught up in the process." At exactly 2 p.m., 3 people in dark suits knocked on my door. But they weren't FBI agents. They were Jennifer Martinez, Detective Jackson from the Financial Crimes Unit, and Amy Chen. "Mrs. Thompson," Detective Jackson said, loud enough for my guests to hear clearly, "we're here about the financial fraud investigation." Mike stepped forward. "Officers, I'm Susan's nephew, Mike Walsh. I've been helping her manage her finances since my uncle passed away." "Mr. Walsh," Prosecutor Chen replied, "we'd like to speak with you as well. We have some questions about recent activity on Mrs. Thompson's accounts." "What kind of activity?" Mike asked, but his confident tone was cracking. Jennifer opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Perhaps we should all sit down." As we gathered in my living room, I continued playing the confused victim while Jennifer laid out the evidence against them. The invalid power of attorney, the recorded conversations, the attempted account access, the fake financial advisor credentials. "Wait," Mike interrupted, his face turning red. "Aunt Susan, did you record our conversations?" I looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Record? I don't know how to work those gadgets, dear." Detective Jackson smiled. "Actually, Mr. Walsh, Mrs. Thompson didn't need to record anything herself. Your phone calls to financial companies were recorded by those companies as part of their standard fraud prevention." "But I was trying to help her," Mike protested. "She asked me to handle her finances." "Did she?" Prosecutor Chen pulled out a transcript. "In this conversation with First National Bank, you told them Mrs. Thompson was, quote, too senile to understand her own financial situation, and that you needed access because she was basically incompetent at this point." Lisa grabbed Mike's arm. "You said she asked you to help." "She did," Mike insisted, but sweat was forming on his forehead. Jennifer handed him another document. "This is a copy of the power of attorney you had Mrs. Thompson sign. Unfortunately for you, the notary who witnessed her signature isn't licensed in this state. The document is completely worthless." Tom, who'd been silent until now, suddenly stood up. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was just providing financial advice." "Mr. Williams," Detective Jackson said calmly, or should I say Mr. Tony Steinberg, "yes, we know your real name. We also know about your conviction for securities fraud in Nevada 3 years ago." The room went dead silent. "You're under arrest," Detective Jackson continued, pulling out handcuffs. "All 3 of you, for attempted elder fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft." As they read Mike his rights, he turned to me with a look of complete confusion. "Aunt Susan, I don't understand. How did they know?" I stood up slowly, letting my robe fall away to reveal the professional business suit I'd been wearing underneath. When I spoke, my voice was steady and strong, nothing like the confused whisper they'd been hearing for months. "Because, Mike,
I spent 35 years as a fraud investigator, catching people exactly like you. I built the case against you the same way I built cases against hundreds of other financial predators." His mouth fell open. You, you were pretending? Every confused question, every grateful smile, every signature on your fake documents, it was all evidence gathering. I walked to my desk and pulled out the notebooks I'd shown Jennifer. I documented every conversation, recorded every admission, and traced every one of your previous cons. Lisa was crying now. "But you seemed so helpless." That's what predators look for, helpless victims. The problem is, you picked the wrong victim. Jennifer handed me a final folder. "Susan, there's one more thing we need to discuss." I opened the folder to find account statements, my real account statements, showing the actual balances in my investment and retirement accounts. The numbers were staggering, even to me. David's engineering salary combined with decades of careful investing and my own fraud investigation income had left us worth over $3.2 million. "This is what they were really after," Jennifer explained to the officers. "Mrs. Thompson is one of the wealthiest women in the county." Mike stared at the statements, realizing for the first time how much money he'd almost stolen. $3 million, he whispered. "Mike," I said, looking at my nephew as the officers prepared to take him away, "you could have simply asked for help. If you'd come to me honestly, told me about your money troubles, I would have helped you. David and I always helped family. But instead, you saw a chance to take everything. You didn't just try to steal my money. You tried to steal my independence, my dignity, and my right to make my own decisions." As they led the three conspirators out in handcuffs, Mike turned back one last time. "Aunt Susan, what's going to happen to us?" Jennifer answered for me. "Elder fraud carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years in federal prison. With the amount you attempted to steal and your previous record, you're looking at 15 to 20 years. After they were gone, I sat in my quiet kitchen and poured myself a glass of the expensive wine David and I had been saving for a special occasion. This seemed special enough. Jennifer joined me for a drink. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Tired," I admitted, "and sad. I genuinely loved Mike when he was a boy. His mother, my sister, would be heartbroken to see what he became." "You did the right thing." "I know, but it still hurts." Over the next few months, the case made headlines in our local paper. 3 people sentenced to federal prison for attempting to defraud an elderly widow of over $3 million. The story included details about how the victim, a retired fraud investigator, had systematically gathered evidence against her would-be thieves. I received dozens of calls from other seniors who suspected they were being targeted by family members or caregivers. Jennifer and I started a support group for elder fraud victims, using my house as our meeting place. But the most surprising call came 6 months after the trial. "Aunt Susan, it's Mike." He was calling from federal prison, using his weekly phone privilege. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I needed to tell you something." I listened silently. "In prison, they make us take money management classes and counseling. I've learned things about myself that I didn't want to face. About how I justified what I was doing, how I convinced myself you were just a confused old lady who wouldn't miss the money." His voice cracked. "I'm not calling for forgiveness or money or anything like that. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I really was. A predator who targeted someone who loved me. Mike, what happened to you? You were such a sweet boy. I don't know. Maybe I got used to taking shortcuts, expecting other people to solve my problems. When Lisa and I got in debt, stealing seemed easier than working." We talked for 20 minutes. He told me about his counseling, about the job training programs in prison, about his plans to rebuild his life when he got out. When you're released, I said finally, if you've truly changed, if you've learned to be honest and work for what you need, my door will be open. Really? Really? But Mike, this is your only second chance. If you ever try to take advantage of me or anyone else again, you'll be on your own. I understand. And Aunt Susan, thank you for stopping me. If you hadn't, I would have kept doing this to other people. You saved me from becoming something even worse than I already was.
3 years later, Mike was released on early parole for good behavior. True to his word, he'd completed every program available: financial counseling, job training, even college courses. He knocked on my door on a Saturday morning, wearing a simple work shirt and carrying a small bag of his belongings. "I got a job at a construction company," he said quietly. "It's honest work, and I'm good at it. I'm not asking to live here or for money. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to build a real life." I studied his face, using all my years of experience reading people. What I saw was genuine humility, earned wisdom, and something I hadn't seen in years: integrity. "Are you hungry?" I asked. I was just making breakfast. Over eggs and coffee, Mike told me about his plans. He'd rented a small apartment across town, nothing fancy, but clean and affordable. He was seeing a counselor twice a week and attending Debtors Anonymous meetings. "Lisa divorced me while I was inside. I don't blame her. She married someone she thought could provide an easy life, and I turned out to be a criminal instead." "What about Tom? Tony? Whatever his name was?" "He's still inside. Turned out he had victims in 4 different states. He won't be out for another 10 years. I poured more coffee and made a decision that surprised even me. "Mike, I want to offer you something, but I need you to understand the conditions first." He looked up warily. "I'm getting older, and this house is getting harder to manage. I've been thinking about hiring someone to help with maintenance, yard work, minor repairs. Someone I can trust." "Aunt Susan, I can't take charity from you. Not after what I did." "It's not charity. It's a job. I'll pay you fair wages for honest work. But if you ever steal so much as a paperclip, if you ever lie to me about anything, if you ever try to take advantage of our relationship, you're gone forever." Mike's eyes filled with tears. "You trust me after everything?" "I trust the man you've become. The question is, can you trust yourself?" He thought for a long moment. "Yes, I think I can." That was 2 years ago. Mike has worked for me ever since, maintaining my house and yard with the same attention to detail he once put into planning cons. He's never asked for advances on his pay, never borrowed money, never even hinted that he might be entitled to anything beyond what he earns. Last month, he brought a woman to dinner. Kate, a nurse he met at his counseling group. She's a recovering gambling addict who lost her house and custody of her children before getting clean. They're both rebuilding their lives one honest day at a time. "Aunt Susan," Mike said as we finished dessert, "I want to ask you something, and I want you to say no if it makes you uncomfortable." I braced myself. "Kate and I are talking about getting married. Nothing fancy, just a small ceremony at the courthouse. Would you be willing to be my witness?" I looked at these two people who'd both hit rock bottom and clawed their way back to decency and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: pride in my nephew. "I'd be honored," I said. Now, sitting in my kitchen on a Sunday morning, watching Mike and Kate work in the garden they've planted for me, I think about the strange turns life takes. The nephew who tried to steal my life savings has become the family I always hoped he could be, not because of blood or obligation, but because of choice and earned trust. My money is still mine, managed by professionals and set aside for charities that help fraud victims. But my heart has room for family again, real family, the kind built on honesty and mutual respect rather than manipulation and greed. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's helping them become better people than they ever thought they could be. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.